channel. My name's Adrian, and today I'm going to take a review of Cyberpunk Red. Last week I picked up the solo or single player rules for it on DriveThruRPG, and I've been going through that. I'm obviously waiting for my physical copy to come through DriveThruRPG, but I've been going through the PDF, and it's made me think I want to play Cyberpunk Red again. So I thought, what I should do is actually go through it all. Did a big campaign last year at running this. So I thought, let's do a review. Let's talk about why I love Cyberpunk Red, even though the rulebook is... I'm going to have quite a few niggles about the rulebook as I go through this. It's 456 pages, so it is quite a tome when you do pick it up. Retails round about £50. It's probably about 65 US dollars, somewhere around there. But yeah, it's everything you're going to need within reason. So it's your player's guide, games master's guide, beastry kind of. But we'll get into that. This is not to say you shouldn't watch this video, because it is an absolutely amazing game. I'd say that there's things you're going to have to do when you're playing a little bit, but then we've all been doing a bit of homebrew with 5th edition. So if you're not aware of Cyberpunk, you may not be, but this has existed. 1988 the first edition came out, which was Cyberpunk 2013, I think it was called. Then 1990 they did the second edition, which was set in 2020. Obviously that's now 5 years ago, so they redid a new issue 5 years ago called, and it's set in 2045, so it's still a little bit in the future now. So it's 20 years from now. This is exactly how the world is going to look. Maybe actually the way things are going. Right. So I'm not going to do the usual link of where you can pick this up, because you can pretty much pick this up. If you do pick this up, I would encourage you to use a bricks and mortar store, because a lot of the deals that you get nowadays, they will include a copy of the PDF, which is why I use Dungeonland. I'm not affiliated with Dungeonland up in Blackpool, but all my orders where I can tend to go through there, just because they will send me a PDF copy as well as physical copies of the books. So let's get into the book. Now, I'm not going to... Well, I am going to do my typical page through by through, but it's not going to be fully in depth, because as you appreciate, at 458 pages, this could take a while. But opening up with the front cover, this should give you an idea of what's going on. There is a wonderful computer game that you can go and buy, Cyberpunk 2077, I think it's called. I had it a few years ago. Obviously, it had a lot of issues. Apparently, all the bugs have been sorted out now. But that will give you and your players a good idea of what's going on. There's also a really good Netflix TV series for Cyberpunk that you can watch also. Okay. Right, so here we've got cast and crew. So these are the writers, designers. They're all down here. There's a lot of people involved in the team, so I'm not going to sort of identify any of them, but take a look through all the art and everything. Contents. Beautiful thing about this book is it all hyperlinked everywhere. It will jump you back and forward throughout most of the book, so it's really helpful. In fact, it's actually an easier read on PDF than it is on physical, for reasons that we'll get into as I go through the book. Content is a little bit confusing or problematic, I think, in some parts, just because of the titles they've decided to use. So you've got things like Fitted for the Future, The Soul of the New Machine. You're like, okay, where's character creation? And this is Fitted for the Future actually starts the character creation as well as The Soul of the New Machines, which is the roles in there. Net running's quite obvious. That is, it's basically hacking. Friday Night Firefly, it is the combat sections. Trauma teams about healing. Welcome to the Future. So about 233 pages, so about half of this book is lore. Okay, so for the lore alone, this book is worthwhile. It's an absolutely amazing setting. Also, our Talsorian Games do a free monthly upload, and you can find all those uploads on DriveThruRPG and PDFs, and this will just give you additional content, one-shots, NPCs for the players to interact with. It's absolutely amazing just how additional and especially free equipment and resources that you've got. Being a book, as you go through this, if you are aware of old school games, this still very much feels old school to me. So we've got a little here just about the updating of why Mike Pondsmith's updated and some of the changes that they've moved into. And then with that old sort of 1990s, 2000 books, what they did is they actually give you a story. I'm, again, not going to ruin any of this, but you can clearly see a silver hand. So if you're aware of any of the lore, this will just sort of show a little bit of the story. And again, they did this in a wonderful way to just immerse the players in. This book is also mostly player friendly. There is actually, I can't really think of, there's some pre-written adventures at the end of the book and some of the NPC stats, but beyond that, really most of it is open. So you know, the players could go and buy this as well. Then you're not going to, you know, take all those secrets out and, you know, struggle to sort of run the game because if the player's going to know things, because it's one of those worlds where a lot of people know a lot of things that were going on. So, and if they don't want to read it, again, doesn't really matter. We get a little bit here, and I like this bit. This just talks through the world. I'm going to explain it briefly because as we get towards the end of the book and we go through the lore section, you're probably not going to want me to spend all the time in the lore. But again, these are the hyperlinks. So in reality, the world sort of changed in about 1994. Megacorporations took over and sort of started to rule the world. And then come 2020, there was civil wars in between the megacorps. A variety of nuclear missiles were set off, and the world was forever changed. So where this is set in 2045, the mega corporations have pretty much lost a lot of their power, but there is a huge, well, larger divide now between the sort of people living on the streets, living day to day, hand to mouth, to the really rich that sort of live off in their gated communities and things. So, and this is where the players are. The players all come together. They are edge runners. They are people that day to day just basically want to find food, find money to go and buy things. But this is a world with cybernetics, and you know, if you lose your arm, you can get a replacement arm. Problem is, it's going to start affecting your humanity and how nice and kind you are. You're going to get a variety of different psychoses as you start to replace your body. But the book's going to go and start through Tabletop Primer. So this is, I think we're used to seeing these if you've picked up role-playing books before. It just sort of explains how a typical session works, what the characters do, what the game master do, and the type of game you're going to sort of make, as well as a load of street slang, which again, this is something that sort of 90s books did. Throughout the book, very much like if you're old enough to remember the original RoboCop that had sort of all of these adverts in to make the world look and feel real. So we've got these adverts here and, you know, screens of things that are going on for the players. And then we're straight into the soul and the new machine, which is character creation. I wish games would slow down just a little bit, and you've got a little bit of lore, and then you're straight into character creation. Nice character creations right at the front, but I think before you get into character creation, you probably need a one-page document just showing the rules of the game. How do roles work? What are we trying to achieve with the players? And this isn't in here yet. The system is very simple, which we'll come on to as and when we get to it. But there are 10 different roles for the players, and each of those roles, all you need to know for now is each of those roles, the only difference is they will have one specific skill or power, as you could call it, that's going to level up with them the longer they go on. And these will vary from like the Rocker Boys, which are the charismatics, performance artists, sort of even up to cult leaders, but it just, because it's a thing of the 90s, you kind of get the impression that they should be a rock star. Solos are assassins' bodies for hire. Net runners are your hackers. Techs, very much as they sound, they're the people that create and make and machines, and they can install the cybernetics. Techs are renegade mechanics and super tech inventors. Meditechs, by their sounds, these are the people there, the street doctors, and going to install the cyberware. Media people, very charismatic, good at finding out the news and missions and things like that. Executives, the corporate brokers that may actually set the adventures up. In my campaign, I had the exec. I didn't have an exec in there, but the exec character was the person that ran the adventure, was telling the players what to do. Lawmen, that there is still elements of law and order in these cities. The fixers, the people that organise street brokers that are very good at buying and selling items, and then finally the nomads. And these are just sort of road warriors and pirates. They're people of no necessarily fixed abode, that as they get more experience, they actually level up their army of vehicles. You can see all completely different in style and will play in different ways. And then we've got a little bit here, bit of art for each of them, and then it will just detail here the role. So for example, the rocker boy here gets charismatic impact. The solo gets ability to fight better, so combat awareness. So they've all got different one. I'm not going to sort of explain them. We'll then get into character creation, and we've got 3 types of character creation models. First one we're going to look at is the Street Rat, which basically is templated. So if you want to create a character, or a games master, you want to do an NPC really quickly, you can do this in about 5 minutes. So I like that one because it's nice and quick. The edge runners just then work on, which sounds strange that they use the edge runner, because you think that's where your player's going to want to be. But the edge runners, again, it will use some pre-generated and some models as well for the players in there. And then finally the complete package, which is the one that I prefer, which is effectively a points by system. You're building and creating your character from the ground up. Because you've got those 10 archetypes, it does feel like, if you're playing a solo, that you should be the combat more orientated person. But there's absolutely no reason why the rocker boy couldn't be as good at combat as the solo, other than their one ability, because other than that, they share exactly the same skills, potential for attributes. Throughout the book, you're going to get all of these sort of charts that will show you very simply where you need to go. Okay, and again, hyperlinked, so it will just pick you through your character. So initially, you're going to pick your role. You're then going to do your life paths, which is amazing. If you've played things like Traveller, anything along those lines, this is a random generator to do the background of your character. But more importantly, each of the roles then will have an additional table as well. You'll then pick out your statistics, which I think off the top of my head was 10. I'm sure it was 10 when I was going through it. You'll then you can say, this is going to be a little bit complicated as you go through, which we'll see, because as you're doing the characters, it will give you all 3 options next to each other, which I think could have been laid out a little bit different. It could have just ran them through. You're then going to pick your skills. You're then going to record your weapons, record your outfit, and then record the cyberware, and then you're pretty much ready to go. So if you're doing the complete package, character is just a sort of, it's a simpler model as you're going to expect. So I'm going to start with Tales from the Street, running your life paths. Initially, this is, players can pick these. Personally, whenever I've run this, I like my players to actually randomly roll. And this is just going to randomly roll your culture, where you've come from, and any sort of starting languages. It's going to take you through your personalities, things you wear, items of clothing. Are your family still alive? Have you got any brothers or sisters? Who was your best friend? Why did the friendship ends? And then finally, it's going to give you your life goals. Just a few additional things that can help you tailor and personalize the character throughout the book as well. Occasionally we'll have these sort of sidebars which will just give and add a little bit more information as we go through. But all of them with their special abilities will feel different in play, but their special talents, not all of them are, let's say, as good throughout total gameplay as others, if that makes sense. And we'll talk about that a little bit as we go through. So we're going to get into the fit of the future, so parts of your character. So here's the 10 attributes: intelligence, reflexes, dex, technology, cool, will, luck, move, body, and empathy. And if you want to do the quick route, you could just roll a d10 and it will tell you exactly what all of your stats are going to be. If you want to do the slightly more complicated, you can just do it from your individual by role, or you can do a points by. So the stats here, we've got mental ones, so intelligence, obviously how bright you are; willpower, your determination to face danger and stress; cool is your ability to stay calm; empathy is very important if you're going to look at things like cybernetics, because the more empathy you have, the more basic cybernetics you can put inside your body to keep you from actually giving into full-on cybernetic psychosis, which will result in your character being handed back to the games master. The combat groups, then we've got technique as well as reflexes. Reflexes, obviously, juggling, aiming, and then technique is your ability to manipulate tools and stuff. That's very good for the tech. Luck is just a fortune group. Now, luck is different to all the other stats. All the other stats, well, basically all the stats in here go from 1 to 10. 8 being the maximum on character generation. But luck is just a spend resource that you get per session, and you can spend luck and then add it to a dice roll. It's got to be declared before you rolled. Body, how tough you can take it, does actually have a little bit of an impact on physically putting cyberware within you. Dexterity, ability to dodge and shoot as well. And then finally movement, how far or fast you can move. So we've then got a few derived stats to work out. If you're not doing just this table here is the points by table on the left hand side, but it will then get you how to work out your hit points, which is a combination of body and will. Hit points don't increase as well as time goes on. Your humanity, which is 10 times your empathy, so this will determine just how much cybernetic you can put in yourself. And then we're on to the skills. So as you are, this is a skill-based game, so this isn't level-based as the characters gain experience. Pretty much your statistics are that they're stuck. They will never improve as the game goes on. Well, there's some cyberware that you can buy to increase it, but as general, it's your skills that are going to improve as time goes on. And there's a lot of skills in this, which again, I think is a throwback from the 90s. As you can see, you've got your skills that are separated out in general by awareness skills, body skills, education skills. You can use almost any statistic and skill when you're creating a role for the players or the NPCs, but the skills are a little bit harder to find. It does, because they're not alphabetized, it can be a little bit harder, and there are some skills that aren't going to come up very often, you know. So it is, there's an art and craft skill is one of them that always springs to mind. Things like acting, maybe, or play an instrument, but you know, it does. It very much feels like a thing of the 90s. Like attributes, skills also go from 1 to 10. If you, depending on which way you want to generate your character, so again, you can just roll on this table and it'll tell you your actual starting skills if you want to go down the quick route, all the way through to my preferred method, which is where you're actually just buying skills at skill cost and you can pick whichever skills you want. It just allows that sort of total flexibility. It's going to take the players a bit longer, but you know, they might want to be a little bit experienced. So let's say you're not an experienced games master or player in it, you may want to take the edgerunner route just because there's a little bit more sort of guidance and help in there. But I think, like most games don't give you a choice. So I think take your time, create the character you want to play, because I think this is really where the game holds up to be so much better. We're then going to have to pick your weapons, difference between melee weapons and ranged weapons in here. Key difference is where melee weapons actually have armor. So if you are risking and willing to get up and close to go and fight your opponents, half their armor is always going to make it a lot easier to actually get through and do damage to them. Now, we then got picking handguns and weapons in here, which I kind of like. I also dislike, because if you look at this now, on this table here, we've got, for example, medium pistol, all the way through to assault rifles. So it tells you the skill you're going to roll, the amount of damage, so you're going to need D10s and D6s. All the damage for, I think, every damage weapon is D6 in here. Standard magazines, rate of fires, hands required, and then the cost. Everything is a round number. Everything in this game seems to cost 50, 100, 500, 1,000, whatever it may be. So, but obviously, as a player, you can, or a games master, you can, you know, you can alter those prices if you want. It does keep it nice and simple, nice and clean, but just a little bit. I don't know. It's a little bit too clean for me, if that makes sense, but at least it's not that abstract purchasing, you know, prices that I don't overly like. But they are very abstract in feel, because it just says, you know, heavy pistol. There's no name in here. There's no artwork for the pistols and weapons. Towards the end of the book, though, you will discover by accident, as you get into it, it has got a lot of named weapons, which, put it in here. It's very strange that this book, just the layout, it's just weird how it is all put together. Then got some things like exotic weapons that you can buy, so like Militech Cowboy. And these are explained in more detail towards the back of the book. Okay. Armor is obviously going to it's going to be the thing that's going to help keep you alive, because when you roll for damage, you then take the armor off, and then whatever's left goes direct to hit points. So hit points do not increase as the game goes on, so you can have as many hit points if you're a starting off character to, you know, once you've got your special talent to level 10, you almost, or in all circumstances, still going to have the same amount of hit points. But armor works very cleverly in this game, where if you don't take any damage off the armor, you don't take any damage. But if you do manage to get through the armor, so you do more damage than the armor depletes. So that basically means as the combat goes on, the armor is going to get worse and worse. So it means it's going to make combats quicker, more deadly, and it's also going to make players think about not sort of getting involved in combats. I know this is quite a combat orientated game, but they need to kind of really think about, do you really want to draw your weapon and sort of get on with fighting? Futuristic game, you know, you're going to see all types of new equipment, tech scanners, tech bags, you know, biotoxins and things that are going to help keep the players alive. But as like I said earlier, lack of art in this book is, I think, disappointing, especially given when we look at these tables, we've got links here. Okay, so it's, you know, jump you to fashion. Fashion is far more important than a lot of players give it credit. But a lot of this tables now is repeated later as we get back into the book. So this game is called Cyberpunk. So it's going to expect the players at some stage to add cyberware to their body. And actually, there's different types of cyberware, because you can take stuff that makes you better at combat, but you can also take things that make you more beautiful, or skin that's going to mean that you're going to become more bulletproof. Or even if you just want basic things here like light tattoos, just because beauty reasons. But you'll also see that some of them don't actually have an effect. So if it is purely for vanity point of view, you're not going to lose any of your humanity, which is quite good. But all the cyberware, it's sort of set up into nice, easy tables in here. So we've got neural wear that's going to go into your mind, cybertropics, which is around your eyes, low light vision, you know, things for audio, and then finally we're going to get into weapons and legs and stuff. So you can have sort of guns created into your arm, but if you're going to do that, you do need to actually buy the cybernetic arm first and then add the mounts or whatever weapons onto it as you want. But for a world of high technology, it is quite hard to find. So I'm going to give you another short story. So The Fall of the Towers, based from 23 years ago. And then we're going to get into getting it done, which is basically the rules of the game, which comes, we're 126 pages in, and now we're going to find out how the game plays. Luckily, it's easy. And you're going to see this, again, I'm going to just highlight this, throughout the games we've got all these wonderful boxes, which does remind me, go and buy the Games Master screen. Because if you've got the Games Master screen, this is so much easier to run. But, so it's going to talk about combat and initiative. What it still hasn't done is tell us how you make skill checks as yet. So, do you know what? I'm going to do it now. If you want to do anything or achieve anything, it's very simple. You take your statistic, you take the relevant skill, you add them together, you roll a d10, add that total together. There may be some plus or minus modifiers, and that's it. You are normally looking to achieve more than about 13 is the average success. So that's the rules. That is the rules, okay? It's that simple. It could have just with a paragraph really early on. But initiative is things gonna, you know, you're gonna use your initiative value, which is your reflexes plus a d10 to see who goes first in combat. And on your combat turn, you get one action, one move. You can also break up your move action to do your normal action in between, because one thing this game does is it talks about cover quite a lot, and it kind of expects the players to move in, attack, and move back into cover, because if you're in full cover, you can avoid being shot, and then they're going to shoot into the cover. Any part of you sticks out and there's a chance you're going to get shot. So we finally get into the section about skill checks here. If you are rolling opposed rolls, you will take you take the attacker stat, skill plus a d10, and versus the defender's stat, skill versus d10. So for example, if stealth versus perception, if it's a draw, the defender is the one that wins. Okay, when you are, there might be some static abilities as well. So, if they're trying to break a lock, and this is just the difficulties, we'll go from a difficulty 9 all the way up to very difficulty or legendary at 29 as well. We've got a critical success and critical failures in this. So the dice explode, sadly only once, but if you roll a natural 10 on your d10, you get to roll it again and add it, meaning there's going to be a very high chance you're going to succeed. On the flip side, if you roll a 1 on that d10, you're going to roll that d10 again, and then you're going to take it off from that skill. So you could still succeed on the critical fail if it's a relatively easy skill check, or if you've got high attributes and skills. Say we've got a few negative modifiers here, but being tired or shooting through fog and skills. We then get we saw the skill list earlier, so we now get another skill list, which just explains the skills in a little bit more detail. Again, not alphabetized. This is what I was saying earlier about this, quite a lot of wasted space. When we're looking at a sort of 458-page book, I think it could have been laid out better. Because if you want to know what the roles are like for all the roles, the special talents, well, they're coming up now. So they've touched on them about 80 pages ago, what's going on. Now we're going to actually find out what they actually do. So, for example, the charismatic impact of the rocker boy. This is what they do. Say they'll go through. It's not a level-based game. So this is what I'm saying. It's very much skill-based, but you do rank up to a maximum of level 10 on your roll abilities. And this will just detail. Say some of them are easy and quite simple to work out. So things like the combat awareness for the solos, quite simple. The exec is. So the exec sounds in on the face of it doesn't sound that interesting, but because they get corporate membership, they get healthcare, but they get a team. So they have employees that work for them that will have specific loyalty stats. So treat them nice, they're going to probably stay with you. Treat them bad, they might even try and kill you. Which is quite cool. The police can do sort of backup roles. The fixer can, is very good at buying and selling items and getting more money. And then finally we've got the nomad here, which has got a nomad vehicle familiarity, but also a family pool. So it's not necessarily his vehicle that is going to improve, but so his family's vehicles, so they can gain access to borrow more. But as they get on the higher levels, then rank up, I should say, their talent. The vehicles and the upgrades they're going to get are great fun. If you want to be outside of the cities and going out into the wilderness a little bit more, you're going to need a nomad in the party. Actually, if you just want a really cool vehicle, nomads are a very good avenue to get that. So then into Friday Night Fight Night, which is the combat section, which we've already seen a little bit of. It's already shown us how the initiative works and what actions you're going to get, and it's just going to now repeat this in a little bit more depth. So you've got the list of the actions that they can do here, and then things like drawing and dropping and stowing weapons. There's no half action for this. You can just automatically pull out a weapon when you want. Aim shots. When you shoot, there's only 2 hit locations for humans in this game. You hit everything else or the head is the general rule. And if you want to go for the head, you've got to do an aim shot. And if you go for the aim shot, actually you can then aim for an item or a leg if you want to slow someone down. And it's -8. It's very difficult to get off those aim shots in there. We're then going to see a repeat here of the weapons table. I keep saying this. There's just I don't know why they've done this in the way that they've done it. They've got an equipment table, and then it's basically in the combat section. So from PDF wise, it is very simple. Going through the physical book, it's quite hard to read because you're just looking through tables and tables of this red, white, and orange text. Resolving range combats here. So if it wasn't for all these wonderful boxes, this would be a tough read. But range combat, you take the attacker's reflexes, the relevant weapon skill, roll a d10 versus the defender's range, which is determined by this table here. Or, this is where people get annoyed, and I don't overly like this rule either. If the defender's dex is 8 or higher, they can try and dodge each and every single attack, which can be kind of annoying that they can just keep dodging out of the way, because you're not even rolling to hit. They're just rolling to dodge whether the opponent hits or not. I don't overly like it. I do allow it in my game because it doesn't actually come up that often. But you've got to think, if the players can have it, the games masters, NPCs can have it. So it's, maybe a conversation between players to maybe you just adjust that out. But it's, it can be problematic. We've got some auto fire rules. If you've got the auto fire skill, you're going to need, it's things like you're going to need more than 10 bullets, but it's just a way of absolutely unloading. We've got suppressive fire rules here, shotguns. So melee is done as an opposed test. So you're going attacker's dex versus the melee skill versus defender's dex and evasion. And if you beat their score, then you're going to do damage to them. And remember, when you roll your damage, any armor that you've got, because it's a melee attack, is going to be halved, which I do like. Martial arts. If you want to make your melee fights really tough, you're going to want to, the player's going to want to go into martial arts. But again, think that from the NPCs, because martial arts really ramp up not only the damage, but they're going to give the players special abilities. And remember, martial arts, it's melee damage, so half in the armor. All the rules here for drowning, asphyxiation. Drugs are in here. Here's what I was saying about the cover. So if you are fully behind stuff, which it talks about in the golden rule, you can tuck down behind most things for cover. You can also, corpses, you can use humans as meat shields in this as well. Well, then it's then going to give us another table on the armor and just detailing how the damage works. So the attacker will roll his damage, which is going to be, normally I said, I'm sure nearly everything's d6s. So, and the one thing you do, if you roll more than 2 6s on the d6, you're going to do critical injuries. And then you get to roll on the critical injury table. So if it's the body, we've got 11 different things that are going to happen. And the same if you've gone for headshots. And headshots, critical injuries are nasty. Now, if you think critical injuries are nasty, you've also got this attrition of taking wounds. So if you get to more than half wounds that you've taken, you're going to be -2 to all actions. And as you go less than, you're going to be -4. So you have got this, again, old school feel to it, where as things happen and you take damage, it's going to become harder to do things. So meditechs, characters are always going to be quite handy. Once you go down to 0 hit points, you will then be rolling on the potential for mortally wounded, and you're going to need to roll a d10 every single round, and you're looking to roll your body or under to survive. Roll above it, your character's gone. Okay, and that difficulty is going to increase by 1 every single round. Rules here for vehicle combats, which I'm not going to get into, but it's things like they have their own structure points. But we've got a lot of choices, road bikes, jet skis, helicopters, gyrocopters, things like that. Reputation is something that becomes very important as time goes on, because you can use your reputation to stare down people. So we've got this face down here. You're going to be going against your cool reputation for a d10. So if people are aware of you, then you might actually be able to get out of combat by reputation alone. Net running. I know I haven't talked much about the difference between Cyberpunk 2020 and I haven't talked about it all on Cyberpunk Red, because I kind of think I don't think it's really relevant for this review, but this is the one thing where I will talk about the difference, because one thing that's changed in the world, in the 2020 world, the netrunners, or hackers is the easiest way to explain it, could stay at home, because they would to get into the World Wide Web, or the net as it's called in this game, they could just stay at home and do everything remotely. Nowadays, you've got to be within 6 meters. So what that's done amazingly is it means that the netrunners have to go out with the players, because all of the data exchanges now are local. So every building will have its own one, and you can't get to access that Megacorporations buildings without getting into the building and being 6 meters from one of those data points. So what it's done is it's moved the netrunners to have to come out and fight or hunker down, trying to, so as the combat's going on, you know, they're doing the net running stuff, but the players as well are then fighting to keep them alive. It basically has brought the action to be a lot more fun, but also it means people are doing things together. Where, you know, I had sessions when we were playing Cyberpunk 2020 where the netrunner would just take over the whole evening. Not their fault, it's just that's how long the process took. But now it's become a really good mini game that will happen at the same time as the combat, is a general rule. And just for the netrunners to access, they're going to need their data link to get in. They will jack in, which is connecting to the net, and then they've got their own abilities and things that they can do and skills on here, including virus. So it's a general rule. What they're doing is they're going through computer programs, again rolling d20s based on the, you know, how good their deck is, and they will be either hacking into to a network to gather secrets information, or they might be looking to take over the cameras, unlock secret doors, or more importantly, this virus allows them just to insert anything they want into the world that the games master and the players, well, the players in general, come up with, which is really, really fun. So they can override systems. But to do that, they're going to have to hack in to the system. Most of this, again, skill versus attribute versus how good your deck is. Plus a D10 against the target's interface, the program's defense. So I've made it sound quite simple. That's because we haven't explained what these sort of ICE programs. So these are the programs that are going to help defend the NPC, the player characters, from getting in. And again, they will have their own attacks, defense, resistance skills that they're going to roll opposed to. And the computer viruses, so here, so we've got the ICE programs here, some of them will attack the deck that they're using to equip, other than will attack them physically. So the netrunners can actually die if things go wrong. And this is going to give you all the tables that you're going to need to buy your deck. You know, the better the deck that the netrunner runs with, the more software, the more things they can do, the more actions they're going to get each round while they're in there. We've then got a section on home security. So if you want to build these platforms from the ground up, add in all your nodes, etc. It's very simple. It looks like a fair bit of work from a games master point of view, but it's not. You're just basically doing a dot line up and down and then putting a few lines to either side just to represent what's in each floor and how they go through and move through, and you know, you just put the defense in. It's absolutely brilliant. Absolutely so much quicker, which is really, really good. The trauma team section, then we'll just talk a little bit more. Again, we've got the random critical tables here for the body and head, as well as the wounds table in here. I swear to you, I'm not repeating this. You know, I've not rolled back. You know, we're back at 222 pages. But there are different ways of stabilizing, depending, you know, if you've got a medic in here, depending on what skill they use, whether they're using first aid, paramedic, or surgery skills, would make it easier or harder just to stabilize characters. Then got trauma teams. The trauma team are specific people that, as you can see from this artwork here, as you die or go down to 0 hit points, they will basically send a armed squad of surgeons to come down and rescue your character and then take them off to heal them up. It's something that you probably should encourage most players to pay for if they can afford it. Which then leads on to the body bank or the found cyberware section. So as time goes on, you may or may not kill people, NPCs, and if they have cyberware attached to them, you could just either take that particular arm or leg off with them, or the eye, or you could take the whole body. And you could actually, if you can find the right person to do it, you can just have that cyberware inserted into you. And if you can find the right person to do it, you could have that cyberware inserted into you. Then got a section here on street drugs, which, as you'd imagine, are going to get the players, they're going to become addicted to things, but these will do things like give them additional attacks, make them immune to damage. The cyber psychosis rules are here. I said when you get put more cyberware into you. Every time you do it, you're going to roll a d6. Well, it might be multiples d6, which is going to reduce your humanity. And as your humanity goes to 3 or lower, it's going to start having, no psychosis or disassociation order. But once you get to 2, you're going to be borderline dissociative disorder, and it's going to tell you how your character and what sort of impact it's going to have for you, whether you become impulsive, failure to respond. And ultimately, as the players go to 0 in empathy, that means the character, the extreme psychosis character, is handed back to the games master, who plays them accordingly as the law enforcement is hunting them down. So just remember, when your humanity is based on your empathy. So if you've got a 6 in empathy, you'd have 60 humanity. And as you're taking your d6s off, it comes off your humanity. And for every 10 that you go under, it would then going to reduce your empathy down. Okay, so it's going to take quite a while, theoretically, if you've got a higher empathy, but it does mean that if you want to be that cybernetic street punk solo, or one of the really charismatic rocker boys with lots of cybernetics, you're going to need to have a pretty decent empathy from outset. Now we are now about halfway through the book, so we are on page 233, and the rest of the book predominantly is now lore and world building. So this is so well fleshed out. It's been a living world that's existed in our world, since 2020, from sort of like the late 90s. So there's a lot of stuff in here, and it's just going to take you through the history of the world, how it happened. But it's also not American centric, which is what I like. It does actually include details of what's gone on around the rest of the world. It will then take you through the FBI still exists, law enforcement, talks about who the president is and her motivations and what she's planning to do. It gives you, it's not bad if the players read this as well. There's not a lot of official secrets in here. We'll then take you through the corporations. So it's got the larger corporations, talks about how the corporations took over, then the fall of the corporations in 2020, and once the nuclear missiles got set off, AI got sort of stronger and started taking out all the corps. And then it was like Arasaka here, it will give you an idea of where the headquarters is, the background of the corporation, how many employees, the logo, some key personnel, because it means you can use these key personnel in adventures and campaign settings for the players as well. Militech, if you want decent firearms or armor, Militech is the way to go. And you're going to have to see that once we get to the end of the book, when it does, it moves it from medium gun to heavy pistol stuff, and it starts to actually name them as we go back on. The game wants you to set your campaigns in Night City, so this is sort of California, San Diego, that sort of, it's like merged in here. And why is it called Night City? Because born in Pasadena in California, Richard Knight was the mind child of the sort of merged city that went on. And as you'd imagine, well, not as you'd imagine, because if you didn't know, but in 2020, there was big riots in the city, and a nuclear missile was set off smack bang in the middle of the city. Hence the reason why it's red, Cyberpunk Red, because the red mist is, well, it's pretty much over lots of the planet because of the fallout, but the whole of the Night City has just got the constant red mist in and around it. So we're going to get a more detailed version of the city here. So see this black zone here? This is the hot zone. That is the epicenter from where the nuclear missile went in. Now the players can go there, and it was going to detail here exactly what's in the hot zone. But it just breaks it all down into different areas. So we've got Little Europe, University District. And then as we go through here, it's going to talk about the different execs in the zone, the threat ratings, some specific NPCs that are in there, buildings that are there as well. And when I said about NPCs, there are a lot. Just pick on, he's got Lucius Rhyme, who's got this rocker boy, a community organizer and newly formed Watson development. Lucius is a rare idealist working to make the world a better place. He is well known for his inspiring speeches and calls to action. There's so many of them in here, and different areas as well. And then we've got some gangs and specific gangs from there, like the Piranhas. They are a typical party gang. They party, drink, smash, take, and deal drugs. They mug people as part of the just because lifestyle. To these guys, the party is everything. And all of these you can just bring in for the players. We've then got a map showing some more locations in here and detailing a little bit about them, so like the Militech offices, which is going to show you exactly where they are. All this just adds to the realism of the world, and it just gives you what we've got. It's got 43 different locations you can take the players to, as well as there's sort of nightclubs in there. There are specific places where the netrunners can go and hang out, and you can find. And it again, when you're looking at the NPCs, it then links back to the city locations as well. Then getting to the day-to-day activities of things like the crime, punishment, justice that goes on, the rules of the city, for example. You know, how to get goods, old stuff, military surplus. Things are quite hard to find. Now, if you want to get around the city, you can borrow a car, you can steal a car, you can have a car, you can walk, or you can use any of these things. So we've got, I was going to say public transport, and the first one I've looked at is speedboats, because obviously it does go onto the ocean, but you can hire gyrocopters. It tells you the price to use them. We've got orbital transport. If you want to really go up in there, then, you know, light trains and things like that. So, you know, if you need to get in and around America. To help the world seem alive, we've got scream sheets. Now, this is news headlines, that things that were going on during the night. So you can roll d6, whether it's going to be international or gossip, all the way down to, and it could be the president is killed by a woman. It could be as random as that. It's just you're going to roll something, and then something impactful is going to happen on that night. Food. Mainly, we are living on kibble, because, as you imagine, proper meat is quite hard to find. There is no real farms in here, so obviously if you can get fresh food, you might be lucky, but it's going to be very expensive, and the players are unlikely to be able to afford things like that initially. So night markets is a really cool idea, and it's basically shipping containers that will randomly appear on the streets at night, and they're just trying to shift and sell illegal gear. And you'll basically roll in this D100 table to determine what type of things the player's going to be able to find. Now, a lot of the stuff in here is going to be below market price, which is nice, but it's going to be completely random on what actually appears during the night market. We've then got another table of all the weapons and the guns for the ranged weapons and things, because this again is covering poor quality and excellent quality. So this is the third time we've seen this table in this book, okay? But remember I was saying earlier on in the book, if you want to look at specific named items, so this is your section here for ranged weapons. So if you want excellent weapons, they're going to cost a little bit more, but they're going to come with names. And this is the thing that I really miss from 2020 to Red, was all the artwork for the weapons, as well as the specific named weapons that helped just feel the world just feel a little bit more interesting and real. Because, you know, if you're shooting someone with a medium pistol, what's better than pulling out your Militech Avenger? Yeah, but it's just for, you know, everyone knows, well, not everyone, but people know what a Glock 17 is. People know what Desert Eagle gives you an idea of what you're using. When it's just a very heavy pistol, it's kind of, How about a Militech Boomer Buster? You'll pay more for that because of the name. Then different equipment, so infrared items and stuff. See, yeah, this is what I said about, it's just odd. We've already looked at the equipment, we've already looked at the weapons tables twice, and now we're looking for a third time with more exotic weapons and a list of stun guns, more armor, how it's all going to work, master gear lists. It just feels like, oh, we've missed out some of the equipment, so we just put it back into the section from earlier. We'll just put it at the end, it'll be fine. People will find it. You know, here's your list of the drugs. We looked at the drugs and we've seen these earlier, and now they're back in it. So it's hyperlinks wise, it does make it simple enough to get through and find things in the book. But if you're running this off a physical book initially, it is hard work. Here's all your deck equipment and your cyber decks, so it feels much like let's just put all the tables together-ish at the back. I just I don't mind it, but I kind of think I'm not sure why you're repeating it 2, sometimes even 3 times. Then get to look at making a living, and this is just doing additional jobs in between adventures. Just try and get a little bit more money in, anywhere from 500 EB up to 2,000, and each of the roles will have a different table, and depending on what your ability rank is, will determine just how much money you can buy. Buying and selling rules in here, and then finally the Games Master section here towards the back is really good. It will give you all the hints and tip on how to run the game. Contacts, what sort of adventure or campaign are you going to set? Are you going to move it around bands or cults or mercenaries and gangs? Is it nomadic in its adventure? And then it's got some hints here. So masterclass, it's always street level, so you don't take on, well, you might take on the bigger picture, but keep it very sort of small, make it sort of capering in size. And then this beautiful section here on beats, on how to break down an adventure. And all adventures should be broken up into 5 beats or 5 parts. So the hook, what are they going to get from it? The development, how it develops, the cliffhanger, what changes are going to happen, then how it develops. You can go back to a cliffhanger again, and then finally you get to the climax and resolution. So it does talk about how the cliffhanger and development you can have multiples in here. We'll then give you examples of different hooks. It gives you then ideas of different cliffhangers in here, and then also the amount of gives you little bits of hints and tips on, how many mooks per edge runner you should have, lieutenants how many you should have, and mini bosses. So these are the different levels of the NPCs, which we'll get onto in a second, which is going to be another slight grumble. It will take you through the development section on how they do. This is a good section that I think shouldn't be overlooked. And even if you're going to run any other game, it gives you as an idea as a games master just how to sort of set out an adventure. It's a really good idea. I've never thought of it as setting it out as specific beats as such. Talked about earlier, it's an experience, so it's a skill-based game. So each adventure, at the end of an adventure in session, depending on how well the players have done and the type of things they've done, will determine whether they get between 10 to 80 experience. And if they're going to improve their skills, it's just got all the costs for normal skills, the double skills to things like martial arts, or their role ability, which is even harder still to increase as time goes on. Mooks and grunts. This is your 10. Only 10 NPCs, bestiary monsters that the players can come across. That's it. I was quite surprised that it was just 10. We then got actually a really good set of random tables here for daytime encounters, evening encounters, and nighttime encounters in Night City. And then finally, we've got these scream sheets here, which are 3 pre-made sort of one-shot type adventures that the players, I'm just sort of skipping through so you don't see it for the player. So it's good that you've got those 3 to get on. And then finally we've got Black Dog here, which is 2040, which is the end of the story that has been going on through the adventure. And then we've finally got the character sheet, which, as you can imagine, with the amount of skills that are in here, let me just turn this sideways, seems quite messy. So I've only ever played this on a VTT, so it is a little bit easier on a VTT because you can hide the skills that you haven't got in there. But it's a pretty good character sheet, in fairness. But I think certain people that are used to less skills might feel it's a little bit bloated. And then you've also got a character sheet as well for your cybernetics, which is quite good because it shows you the maximum that you can have per slot, but it doesn't leave you a lot of room to actually put in the data that is in there. So that's it. That is the look at Cyberpunk Red. So let's just jump back to me and I'll give you my final thoughts. If you watched my top 10 books at the start of this year, Cyberpunk Red was in the top 10. So as much as I grumble about the layout, it's a very good game. It's so simple. The fact it uses a D10 might put people off because, 1 in 10 chance of critting, 1 in 10 chance of fumbling. The thing is, the NPCs have got that equal thing, so you will have a element of swingy combat because if you do roll high, you can crit. When you think about it from the crit damage point of view, Every time you roll 2 6s on the d6s, you've got a crit. So if you've got a 2d6 damaging weapon, highly unlikely to crit. If you've got something that rolls 7 or 8d6, you could roll crits quite often. You know, looking at you, Free League, how often do your 6s come up? So it's very, very dangerous. Players are going to need armor. They are going to go and do some really good stuff. The book itself it's one of the worst laid out books I've ever read, and I've read some horrific books because not because of the data that's in there, but really the amount of repetition. When you've gone to 450 pages, and as you see, you've got those weapon tables 3 times in there, and no artwork. It becomes quite a hard read. Reading off PDF is fine. Physically, if I was to run this on a table with my friends, and I'd never read the PDF, and you hadn't gone through all the hyperlinks, I think I can see why people criticise this book. And it's an absolute shame because the game plays really well. It's pretty fast. It's not, it's not Shadow Dark fast in combat at all, because there are a little bit more things that players need to do, and you've got the element of opposed rolls, which against that old school feel. Some people don't like it. Some people like, if you get over a certain target, you just automatically do that hit or that damage. But I'm used to opposed rolls, so it doesn't bother me. The world though is absolutely amazing. It's so much information. Say, because half that book, as you could see, is, well, it's weird because you've got a quarter of the book is character creation. It's about 80 or 90 pages is character creation, with the amazing backgrounds and the randomness of how you can roll your character if you want. I'd use the full random backgrounds, the specific background random rolls for the rolls, and then allow them to go and completely customize. But you can use the edgerunner blocks to get an idea of what skills and stuff that the players should have. But then you're away. It's about 30 minutes to do a character. I've rolled up several now. I've rolled a lot of NPCs out. So that we did the campaign, I think it was about 3 or 4 months. We ran the campaign and it ended on a nasty cliffhanger, and we've still not gone back to it because we lost a player. So we're just waiting for that player to come back, and then we're going to get back into it. And especially because now I've got the solo rules, and I've reread this again. I'm like, okay, that my campaign needs to come back, because I think I did explain on one video what happened, and I'll talk about it once we start getting back into Cyberpunk Red. But there's lots of other books. There's so much free resources out there on dystopian or on the Talsorian Games website, that they've been incredibly generous on the amount of information. So as much as I mock the 10 stat blocks in the bestiary, it's not even a bestiary, is it? It's 10 different things that you can fight. There's so much that it's 5 years. So every month they've released free stuff, and they've been doing it now for 5 years. So there's like 60 free one-shots, adventures, characters and things like that you can go and download direct from them. And I think they've done them as packs as well, because when I got mine through DriveThruRPG, there are 12 PDFs in each one of them, and I downloaded all 6, which is just mad that there's that much information. But honestly, this, if you like The Witcher, the role-playing game, it's so much feels like that, and basically any other game. You've got stats from 1 to 10, skills from 1 to 10. You roll a d10, add the stat and the skill together, and you're looking to normally to get 13, 15, whatever it may be, or beat the opposed roll. It's that simple. Combat, nice. You can do a move, and then you can do an action. It does lack, there is an element where it lacks, the ability to shoot on the move. As in, do you get a bonus or a negative? But because you can break up your move, you get that wonderful move and shoot anyway. There's some odd bits about if you're not fully behind cover that you don't get full cover and stuff, but it does encourage players to think tactically about the maps, to hunker down in between move actions, and honestly really think, because the amount of damage you can do, and because armor does deplete during the time, it can be quite deadly. The one thing I would recommend that you pick up if you are going to pick this book up is go and get this, which is Black Crow, and this is like another 170, another 90 items, because say that the book if you don't know that you can buy the expensive and cheap weapons at the back with the proper name, it does feel a little bit lazy. For me, if you're going to have those weapon tables repeated 3 times, I've probably repeated myself now more than 3 times talking about the weapons tables. Get rid of 2 of them and actually put the named items back further in the book. It really could do with it doesn't need a second edition, but it just needs a revised edition to be player friendly and games master friendly, because I could see why people are put off. I've done the groundwork, I've done the hard work. Hopefully this video will show you why you should add this to your collection. Lore alone, it's definitely a reason, and it's like value for money. There's a lot in here. It is a thick tome, but maybe because no, I'm not going to say it for a 4th time, but that's it. I'm going to leave it there. Go and pick up Cyberpunk Red. Go and buy Black Crow. I've bought the next 3 books, so I'll be doing some reviews of those at some stage, as well as hopefully I'm trying to work out how I do solo role-playing sessions through. Because I think this, now with the solo rules, would be a perfect video for me, because I can show off just exactly how good this actually is. So if you've enjoyed this video, please like, share, subscribe to the channel, go and support me on Discord, and I'll see you on the next one. Thank you for watching.